Now, there were a number of tunnel rats in Vietnam who went down tunnels as we kept on staying in on operations in Vietnam. Two of them wanted to start MiVAC and started MiVAC. And do you know why? Because they knew the damage, the danger there was with mines. You know, we put in a minefield in Vietnam. This minefield should never have been put in a million years. It was totally against all engineer principles. One of the principles is it's got to be protected with aimed small arms fire. That was never done. Or, in fact, the task was given to the popular force, or like the reserve forces in Vietnam, or the Vietnamese themselves, called the AVN. And of course, they didn't patrol. So, in this particular minefield, we laid the M16 mine. Let me describe that to you. It's in your little brochure, and it's just inside the last flap. That's the M16 mine. It weighs a couple of kilos, pretty heavy. There's a lot of explosive in this. In fact, you tread on it, or near it, and it springs up about 1 metre high. And then it blows, so that anybody within the range of 75 metres, it's lethal. So 150 metres, these things. Underneath some of these mines were grenades, and we put them in as anti-lift devices. You'd think the minefield could have been effective, but it's not effective because you know why? The Viet Cong used it as a Q store. The Viet Cong went into it and they took out the mines to use against us. And when they took out these mines to use against us, they were lethal against us. And in being lethal, we had 555 people killed in Vietnam. Nearly half of them were killed with our own mine used against us. We had thousands injured. More than half of them were injured. So you see, we knew about it. And who has to go to every one of these minefield and these mine areas, these booby trap actions? It's the engineers. The engineers lost more people in Vietnam, right? More people in Vietnam, percentage of population, than any other corps. So, I told you I'd come back to how they cleared it. There were many ways they cleared it, but one of the ways they cleared it was using women. Women and young girls of 15 and 16. In fact, several of them were blown up initially, but then, of course, they got very good at it, and they seemed to have a softer touch and a finesse with doing it, and they took out hundreds of mines and used them against us. So that's where the women bit comes from, training the women in Laos. The other thing is, of course, is they also don't have anything to do. Right? So it takes them away from the mine detector, or in fact, the metal detector. So you see, these two sappers knew about the devastations that mines could cause. They were Tasmanians, and they started MiVAC, and they wanted me to be the patron. So that's the beginnings of it. 8 or 9 years ago this started. Since then, we have done a lot of work in Southeast Asia. We have done work in Vietnam. We have done work in Cambodia. We have done work in Sri Lanka. right, where we built an orphanage over there. And then we found Laos. As I said before, we thought Cambodia was bad, but I tell you, Laos is almost 10 times worse. Right? You see, this war that was going on in Laos was a secret war. The Americans weren't fighting it, oh no. The CIA were fighting it, an underground CIA. And you know, they commanded Thai divisions over there. And they also commanded a lot of the Hmong, or you may have heard of the Montagnards, the mountain people, who really could fight. They could really fight. And they were doing the fighting in Laos. Why is Laos involved? Laos is involved because Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the North Vietnamese, used the trail down through Laos to provide the resources to feed the war in South Vietnam. The munitions, the vehicles, everything that came down that track. You've heard of the Ho Chi Minh Trail? That's what it is, Ho Chi Minh Trail, through Laos. And this is one of the reasons that it was extensively bombed. I understand that there was more than 1 million people killed in Laos, right? And we don't know much about this war, do we? Right? There are a few books about it, but we don't know much about it.